Welcome back to Noir Alley. I'm Eddie Muller. This week's film is a change of pace. It's Intruder in the Dust, which in 1949 was definitely a change of pace for its studio. MGM's reputation was built on lavish musicals, not message pictures. And while this story carries a big message, it's also the closest thing to a detective story ever written by its author, William Faulkner. The Mississippi native was one of the most revered writers of the 20th century, with novels that included The Sound and the Fury, As I Lay Dying, and Light in August. In fact, the same year this movie was released, Faulkner was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature, not for a single book, but in recognition of his entire body of work. Well, I doubt the Nobel Committee considered his Hollywood screenplays, which Faulkner admitted he did solely for the money, script work paying far better than novels and short stories. In fact, it was MGM who first hired Faulkner, despite the writer's rambling prose style, which critics deemed unfilmable. His hiring was more about prestige than practicality. And although he did co-write a couple of memorable movies for Howard Hawks, To Have and Have Not and The Big Sleep, most of Faulkner's screen work was undistinguished. When Intruder in the Dust was published in 1948, Faulkner hadn't written a novel in 6 years. Director Clarence Brown read the book in galley form, and with the support of MGM's production chief, Dory Sherry, he insisted that Louis B. Mayer buy the rights. Well, nothing could have appealed any less to the conservative studio boss than a racially charged drama about a lynching in a small southern town. But Brown told Mayer he owed him a personal project, as he'd been the studio's most reliable director since the early 1930s. He'd been nominated by the Academy as Best Director 6 times without winning, which may still be a record. I'll have to ask Dave Karger. In 1949, racially themed movies were a thing in Hollywood. Home of the Brave, Lost Boundaries, and Pinky were all released that year, and all of them dealt with prejudice against African Americans. But Clarence Brown wanted to do something that cut even closer to the bone. So he demanded Intruder in the Dust be shot where the story was actually set, in Mississippi. The story's fictional town of Jefferson was a stand-in for Faulkner's hometown of Oxford, which he incorporated in many of his stories. Since 1891, 7 black men had been lynched in surrounding Lafayette County, most recently in 1935. The murder of Elwood Higginbottom, who was accused of killing a white farmer, is the basis of this story. Clarence Brown not only brought the actors and crew to Oxford, he cast lots of local citizens as members of the lynch mob, knowing full well some of them had probably participated in that 1935 lynching. Maybe this doesn't sound to you like Noir Alley material, but think about it. A man accused of murder claims he's innocent, and a trio of outnumbered strangers race against the clock to save him from impending execution. Well, that's the plot of every other Cornell Woolrich story. Weave in Faulkner's insights on racism, and it's still a crime story, one motivated by hatred and intolerance rather than lust or greed. Well, as teenage detective Chick Mallison, Brown cast 16-year-old Claude Jarman, whom he discovered for his 1946 hit, The Yearling. Now, that won Jarman a special juvenile Oscar, and he's just as good here. As is David Bryan as his uncle, a lawyer who has to face his own ingrained prejudice while defending a black landowner accused of killing a white man. For the role of Lucas Beecham, Brown cast Puerto Rican actor Juano Hernandez, a one-time boxer who'd been in race films for years, but had never before had a role like this. No black man had, because no Hollywood movie dared present a black man this self-possessed, proud, and quietly defiant. Even the way Lucas moves was groundbreaking, walking tall among white people and gazing at them unapologetically. But of course, when they were making the film in Mississippi, Hernandez couldn't live with the other cast and crew members in quarters that were restricted to whites only. Instead, he stayed with a local black businessman, a mortician. But it was worth it for Hernandez and for Clarence Brown and Claude Jarman, all of whom later said that this was the film of which they were most proud. Here is William Faulkner's Intruder in the Dust.